Have a blessed day.
The play is Our Fam. You don't know about Our Fam? Go look her up on social media. Go look at YouTube. 19-year-old from Spain, 6'6", block shots, runs the floor, rebounds, post up, inside, outside, pop the corn, serve the beer, and it can clean up the mess when you're done eating your meal. This lady is absolutely fantastic.
Pro basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
A huge number out there on Cason Wallace to win Defensive Player of the Year at 500-1. That is worth your attention. And a number that I talked about before the season that I still think should be lower is Mark Daigneault to win Coach of the Year at 11-1 in the NBA. If they win 70, he's a lock for top 3. If they win 73, it's his.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
What are those things called?
A shooting star.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that one. Like it just burns up quick, and you love it while you can see it, and bing, it's gone in the blink of an eye.
Right.
That's my fear for Cam Scatterby.
Yeah, and that's not a big deal, but I will say it's weird, and it seems like he really enjoys that attention, which is all fine because he's a young guy.
Yeah.
But possibly dangerous in a city like New York.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Close to $1 million in volume being traded right now in the Offensive Player of the Year. If you did put $100 down on Jonathan Taylor, that would pay back $143, so a 43% increase on your money that you had. There are a lot of long shots in here, but it doesn't feel like those would be good bets. Like, hey, I'm going to put it on Justin Herbert. Well, yeah, if Justin Herbert wins it, Joe, a $100 wager would pay back $10,000. They even have a market for if you want to bet Malik Neighbors.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Kiffin bolts to LSU and a new deadline in the WNBA CBA talks. FOS Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at Front Office Sports Studios in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access NASDAQ 100 companies in just one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. Well, coming up on today's show, we have the latest on the new deadline for the WNBA and players to come to an agreement on a new CBA. But let's start with all the big coaching news in the SEC in today's main event. Well, the long national saga of where Lane Kiffin would coach next season is officially over, as the former Ole Miss coach announced that he would take his talents to Baton Rouge, signing a reported 7-year, $91 million deal with LSU that will pay him $13 million a year and will make him one of the highest paid coaches in the country. Now, in a domino effect, the remaining SEC schools with open vacancies like Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas all picked their new head coaches all after Kiffin's announcement. So to break down everything that happened, let's bring in Front Office Sports reporters David Rumsey and Amanda Kristovich. So, David, let's start with you. Were you surprised that Kiffin chose LSU?
No, I wasn't. A lot of people consider LSU one of, if not the best job in college football, just given the talent that you can recruit at LSU in the state of Louisiana. No other in-state competition from another major program. All the NIL money they have, the boosters. Obviously, salary may have been a factor, but I think Ole Miss would have given Kiffin that same salary, if not something higher. So I think it was really more the recruiting he can do in state and really the prestige of a university like LSU. 3 different head coaches winning national championships there this century. So you have to think Kiffin has a national championship on his mind and maybe multiple ones.
Yeah, Amanda, your thoughts here too, given the fact that you've covered this since Brian Kelly's ouster at LSU. Was Kiffin pretty much the only candidate that they were really looking at here? And what do we know about maybe his contract details?
I think it's hard to say that he's the only candidate, but I think it's pretty clear that he was the candidate, right? I mean, Lane Kiffin LSU is a place where you need to have a cultural fit in addition to, an on-field fit. And one of the issues that Brian Kelly had was that, he was considered a Yankee. He was a Northerner to the folks in Baton Rouge. He was not considered, somebody who embraced the culture in Baton Rouge. And so I think that Lane Kiffin obviously has a lot of experience in that area of the country, coming from Ole Miss, very similar. From a contract perspective, He has inked a 7-year, $91 million deal. The only person who is theoretically making more than him is Kirby Smart. However, if you add in the amount of money that Kiffin could get as a bonus if he wins a national championship, that would make him the highest paid coach in history. The most interesting part of the contract, though, I wanted to point out was his buyout. He has a buyout of 80% of whatever he is still owed on his contract, and there was no offset or duty to mitigate clause. Now, you're probably, if your jaw hasn't hit the floor, it should, because Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry said that he does not want LSU to have a contract that owes a coach tens of millions of dollars in a buyout. Not only is this buyout bigger than Brian Kelly's, but it's a guaranteed buyout because, like I said, there's no offset clause. Brian Kelly has an offset clause. So if he gets another job, LSU won't have to pay him that $54 million. But Lane Kiffin is owed all of that money no matter what, whether he gets fired or he he gets another job or not.
Wow, that's really, really incredible. David, to that point, is Lane Kiffin even an upgrade here from Brian Kelly from what LSU had previously here?
I do think he is. He has a little bit more cachet in the transfer portal. He's brought a lot of players to Ole Miss because it doesn't have as many players to recruit in Mississippi as you might have in Alabama or Louisiana. So he's gotten used to that, and he'll really be able to bring that same prowess to LSU. And like Amanda was saying, he's had a little bit more success than Brian Kelly has had anyways. I mean, Brian Kelly never was that right cultural fit at LSU. They struggled on the field. And you see this year, Ole Miss is a top 10, top 5 ranked team headed to the college football playoff, albeit without their head coach, Lane Kiffin now. But yes, I do think the Lane Kiffin that we've seen the past few years is definitely an upgrade on the sidelines than the Brian Kelly we've seen over the past few years.
Yeah, and basically same question, Amanda. I mean, given the fact that you were mentioning the governor having to get involved in this, which is normally not something we would see in a coaching situation like this, is this exactly what LSU wanted? They got the guy that they wanted here.
I think so. I think Lane Kiffin was considered the biggest prize in the coaching carousel. Folks could argue that James Franklin was maybe the biggest prize, after he was fired at Penn State. But I'm not, especially for the SEC, I don't think that he was that high up. I think that he was the number one, target of multiple schools. And I think that it was pretty clear that if he was going to go anywhere, it was going to be LSU.
David, when he announced that he was leaving to go to LSU, Lane Kiffin, in his statement, said that he wanted to coach Ole Miss through the remainder of the college football playoff, but the administration told him no. It's interesting because Tulane's head coach, John Sumrall, is going to be able to coach the Green Wave in their final game. What were your thoughts on this whole situation with Kiffin not being able to stay with Ole Miss? And do you blame Ole Miss here?
Yeah, and Eric Norris still going to coach North Texas in their championship game and a potential CFP run too. But look, it's completely different in the SEC going from Ole Miss to a rival in LSU. Not only are we talking about players he could recruit to come with him to LSU next season, but also the coaching staff. And look, I mean, in a perfect world, yes, I would like to see more of an NFL model in college football where you can fire whenever you want, but there's no hirings until after a certain date. The NFL has done a good job pushing that hiring cycle back so they're not having this chaos and kind of last minute run on coaches. And I would really like to see college football move back that signing period, that national signing period for incoming recruits. They've already pushed back the transfer portal and done a little bit of work there. So I think they're heading in the right direction, but there's still a lot more work to do because, yes, in a perfect world, Lane Kiffin would be able to just coach out Ole Miss during the college football playoff, get through until January, and then make a decision on whether he wants to stay. And Ole Miss wouldn't be behind the ball having, no candidates left. If there's no hirings, and they can go out and get a good candidate if he does leave.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to respond to what David was just talking about, because you even have college basketball coaches like Rick Pitino getting in on this conversation about what David was literally just talking about the hiring process, the transfer portal, and basically the schedule of how these things are aligning so quickly. I mean, is there a fix here down the road, or is this just how things are going to be?
I mean, I think it's interesting that Rick Pitino made that comment, especially because my first thought when I saw those comments he made was, well, college basketball arguably is the same problem. I don't think it's necessarily the same situation, or we've never seen a situation in college basketball that is this similar where a coach, gets poached before they're about to make a big deep March Madness run, but that's not to say it couldn't happen. I would also say that the transfer portal timing is just as bad for basketball as it is for football, although there was a proposal that is still sort of winding through the NCAA governance to push back the basketball transfer portal until the end of the Final Four, which makes sense to me. Wait until after all of the championships are over. The other thing that I think about is the legality of all this. It is very hard for any entity without a collective bargaining agreement to impose any sort of movement restriction, right? So it's the same issue with the transfer portal. If the NCAA wants to put a restriction on when the coaches can get hired, there needs to be some sort of, a collective agreement there, right? You can't just unilaterally do that. It'll get struck down in court like the transfer portal did. So I think that it's important to point that out, that this is one of the many issues with this world that we're in, where college football and college basketball are basically professional sports, and yet the players are not employees. There's no collective bargaining. There's no, and that's the mechanism to allow these rules to be put in place.
We're going to put a quick pause on this conversation for just a moment. Coming up, we're going to dive into what Kiffin's decision meant to the other schools with open head coaching vacancies when Front Office Sports Today returns.
He's the fan favorite. They love talking about Stafford, the 38-year-old guy. He's the Super Bowl champ. We got the family. Any opportunity to pump McVay and Stafford as a team, they do that. They love this team. They loved Aaron Donald, and rightfully so. Best defensive player, but they love to pump up Stafford.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
When you look at Duke, you got to look at Cam Boozer. 18 points. The Bruiser, I may call him. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. I know he shot the ball 1 of 4 from 3, but he's showing his ability to really be a different player than his dad. A little bit more dynamic, a little bit more athletic.
College Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Ashton Genty has been hit behind the line of scrimmage more than any player in the National Football League. Yep. So you just gave him the ball in the end zone. Do the math. How's that going to work out?
It's like what I said earlier.
You got hit behind the line of scrimmage. You got tackled in the end zone.
Yeah.
Oh, they're terrible. But the thing is, Brady, you draft offensive linemen before you draft a star running back. Like they went backwards.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Goff and Mahomes were never taken serious. Hurts won't be, even if they're the 1 seed. Jonathan Taylor plays running back. Stop. Mahomes lost the head-to-head to Josh. Can I confidently eliminate every single person booked behind Josh Allen to at least beat out Josh Allen? So I'm in a head-to-head with Stafford May?
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone. In Front Office Sports Today, I'm Baker Machado, and let's continue our conversation about the college football head coaching moves over the weekend with FOS reporters David Rumsey and Amanda Kristovich. So, David, with Kiffin now gone, Ole Miss promoted their defensive coordinator Pete Golding to be their new head coach. Was he always the successor to Kiffin, or did they really miss a chance here to hire somebody different because they waited so long for Kiffin to make a decision?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Baker. They just needed some consistency, right? Lane Kiffin taking most, if not all, of his offensive staff with him to LSU. So they turned to the defensive coordinator. Now Ole Miss hasn't had the best defense in the country this season, but the players in that locker room do really like Pete Golding. So I think it's natural to elevate him for the CFP run. I don't know exactly what his contract details are long term, but I think that makes the most sense right now. Try to build some momentum. They'll have at least a home playoff game, you would think. So maybe they can win that game, make the quarterfinals, and see what happens in the college football playoff and carry that momentum into 2026. Certainly, it's going to be hard to carry on what Lane Kiffin has done and with all the players he can bring and the experience he has on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, he's the play caller for that team. So it's going to be an uphill battle, not just for this college football playoff, but for next season as well. But I think that's really all they could do now. I mean, you can't bring in an outside voice, an outside coach into the college football playoff. And really, you can't bring somebody in after the college football playoff because of the calendar challenges we were just talking about.
Amanda, we saw 4 coaches from the American hired, especially at the SEC level. Florida hired Tulane's John Sumrall. Auburn hired South Florida's Alex Golesh. Arkansas hired Memphis's Ryan Silverfield. I mean, they even promoted the American, all these coaches on X going to the SEC. Is that sort of what we're going to see these smaller conferences do now? Say, look, we're the pipeline for these future coaches.
Yeah, look, the American has had a ton of talent this year, and that's undeniable. It's been known pretty much at least, halfway through the season, if not earlier, that their conference champion was going to be the group of 6 conference champion that got that 5th slot in the CFP. Multiple teams have been ranked in the AP top 25. Tulane's been in the CFP top 25 the past 2 weeks in a row. And now, the conference champion, Tulane and North Texas, will end up being the CFP representative from the group of 6. So, the American did lean into this fact that they got, many coaches poached, 3 in one day. It was pretty unbelievable. But, I think from a branding perspective, they wanted to acknowledge that, we can say, oh, well, we're not a power conference, so our great coaches, our great talent, our great players are all going to get poached. Or we could say that we're the hotbed of the next big thing, right? And I think that that's what they were trying to do with their tweet, and that's what they're trying to do with their overall, reputation.
David, which of these coaches were you either surprised by their hiring, or do you think is going to be basically the next Lane Kiffin that's going to be the next coach that's going to be making millions, one of the highest paid coaches in the league?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what John Sumrall can do with Florida. A hot prospect right there. And obviously, they were in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes we were talking about, and it kind of became clear in the past week or so that it was either LSU or Ole Miss, and really it was probably always LSU. But Florida is a great program as well. A lot of talent in that state to recruit from, a lot of donor money, booster money. So John Sumrall has done a great job so far, and I think he can do a really good job at Florida. And then if you do a good job there in Gainesville, that's kind of a place that you stay. I don't think he would get poached somewhere else like Lane Kiffin got poached from Ole Miss. Now, you can always try to climb the ladder a little bit, but Florida is a great place and somewhere I think you would want to stick around if you're having success.
And meanwhile, one coach that did lose his job in the SEC was Mark Stoops, the winningest coach at the University of Kentucky. Amanda, is that still a destination school that still could command a really high-end coach to come to a place like Kentucky, even though given the fact that Stoops pretty much had a 500 record there?
I mean, look, Kentucky is the basketball school of the SEC, you could argue. So I think it's going to be difficult to really get a coach that is used to having, being at a football school, candidly. I don't really know how else to put it. I think it's a great opportunity because there's plenty of money at Kentucky, in the sense that they are used to having great athletics. Like I said, from a basketball perspective, they have a lot of history there. So I think that it's possible to win there, but I also think that it's going to be difficult to really get one of these top coaches who is not used to fighting with the basketball coach for resources, candidly. But I do think that, there is an opportunity there to be in the SEC, to make a name for yourself. If you are a coach who maybe, like I said, is coming from the group of 6, maybe the best group of 6 coaches are kind of already taken, but not, there are always others. So I think it's kind of a toss up there.
Let's move to the Big Ten, David, because obviously the other big school that has not filled their vacancy yet is Penn State. Given the fact that so many schools now have already hired their head coaches, you mentioned, recruiting now is already like at the top of the mind. What does Penn State do? Are they waiting right now? Is their head coach right now playing in the college football playoff and that's why they can't make a hire? Or what do we know about what Penn State's planning to do?
Yeah, that is kind of the mystery because we're seeing other moves like Michigan State. They fired Jonathan Smith and then quickly hired Pat Fitzgerald, the former Northwestern coach. That move is kind of happening today. So, yeah, Penn State is really dragging their feet and doesn't seem to be really a clear favorite out there. And, you watch what's happened with James Franklin at Virginia Tech, and that move was just lauded by so many people. Now, different expectations for Virginia Tech than Penn State, but the salary he got there, pretty much the same he had at Penn State. The NIL resources, they're building a front office, going to hire a GM there. So, he might even be, I don't know if you want to say in better position than he was at Penn State, but certainly people are happy for him and excited for Virginia Tech. So, yeah, Penn State is definitely kind of has an uphill battle right now as they watch, Ohio State go for probably, a run into maybe getting back-to-back national championships.
With the last couple minutes that we got with you guys, Amanda, what are the things that you're watching with the last couple weeks before the end of the year, before the college football final? Just in terms of everything else in college sports right now, what are you watching?
Oh gosh, well, where to start, right? I mean, look, I'm really, really excited. I always get excited about the non-power conference school that gets into the playoffs. So I'm actually very excited for the American Conference Championship.
David, same question. What are you watching the last few weeks of the year?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Tuesday night's college football playoff rankings.
Crazy to see what happens in the college football playoff. Great stuff as always, David Rumsey and Amanda Krisovich. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we have more Front Office Sports today headed your way right after this quick break.
Let's play our game of buy or sell. Buy or sell. Thursday night football should end after week 10, George. You going to buy or sell this?
It's too short a week. It's not healthy for the players. You'll never be able to convince me otherwise here. The NFL will tell you, oh, stats tell us no, it's not more injuries. And that's all BS. All right. Should it end after week 10? In a perfect world, there probably should be no Thursday night games. Should it end after week 10? Sure, I'll buy this. But it's not going to. There's too much money here. It's never going to end, all right? They're going to have it forever. You're lucky there's not a Friday, Saturday schedule as well, and there's some laws involved there as to why there's not. The NFL is going to have a schedule or for any day they can get here. It's all about money here. And if the players don't want it, by the way, you're going to have to realize, well, you're going to lose a significant chunk of revenue out of your salary as well here.
Right.
So I'll buy this, but it doesn't matter. It's not going away.
I mean, George just basically said everything that I was going to say, so what is the reality? The games, so of course I'll buy it. The games are not good. Generally, the home team has a big advantage. If not, the teams are not prepared to play on Thursday night. Yes, there have been some upsets and some underdogs winning. We saw it Thursday night. But the quality of play on Thursday is lower than what it is on the weekends. And there's no end in sight to it because of what George said, the money. That's just all that matters. If Amazon Prime doesn't take it, Netflix will take it. If they don't take it, Apple will take it. If they don't take it, somebody else will take it. I don't know. Hulu, I don't know. You make it up. Someone will. So it is not going away. And, generally speaking, I'm excited every week when the games begin and then I forget and then the games usually stink and I'm like, oh, gosh, this game wasn't good anyway. So George is right. Not going away because of the money.
Fantasy Sports Today. Friday, starting at 3 p.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable tech, advanced analytics, AI, and more, that same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world. So let's rethink possibility. Well, just moments before their latest extension was about to expire, the WNBA and players agreed to another extension. This would continue talks on a new collective bargaining agreement, moving that deadline to January the 9th. Now, the players said they expect substantive movement on talks during this next window. So let's bring in FOS women's sports reporter Annie Constable. So Annie, take us into the decision to extend these talks.
Well, it was a late night, ladies and gentlemen. Conversations, negotiations came down to the wire, which was that 11:59 p.m. Eastern deadline. And a decision wasn't made in terms of an agreement to this extension until the final minutes, before the previous extension was set to expire. And what I know is there was a bit of back and forth between the union and the league in terms of deciding upon the length of this extension. The league had discussed a 21-day extension. 24-hour extension was discussed at one point before ultimately both sides agreed to this January 9th date as the new deadline for negotiations, for the current CBA.
All right, so let's talk about some of the sticking points here, because obviously revenue sharing is still one of the biggest parts here. But a few weeks ago, you had reported that the WNBA, the league, had actually proposed a new proposal here that would actually make the max salary over $1 million for players here. Yeah. Is that still on the table? And I guess where are still the sticking points?
So what we know is both sides have since met multiple times following that proposal from the league. And what I've also learned is that when little tidbits about these proposals aren't leaking, it's usually an indication that the terms of proposals aren't clearly defined or are still being discussed back and forth. And so there's a reason we have not heard clear terms following that $1.1 million max contract, which we know is a combination of base salary and potential earnings, which is why so many players had an issue. I shouldn't say so many players. The union as a collective had an issue with this proposal because this, once again, was a proposal rooted in potential earnings versus a clear, definitive way that the salary is being driven by revenue. So what we know is the current CBA, we've seen the salaries increase by 3% every year. And that is a defined amount. And what they want to see is a salary structure that allows their revenue to grow as the league revenue grows, which includes basketball-related income, as is the case in the NBA.
Okay, so the new deadline is the first week of January, I guess the second week of January, I guess technically, but this is right around the time that Unrivaled starts. Do you think that we're going to have another extension here, or do you think that we might get something done before players start playing in other leagues like Unrivaled?
You know, I think it's too early to speculate necessarily on when exactly a deal will be done. Obviously, that January 9th date being set is the goal, but realistically, there's still a lot on the table that needs to be discussed. Both sides are at odds on the salary structure, which remains the sticking point in these negotiations. And beyond that, there are a number of terms that still need to be negotiated on. Just off the top is things like standards across the league as far as facilities go, which we know a lot of teams are investing currently in practice facilities being built. But that's something that should be, or the union believes should be in the CBA. Another aspect is the codification of the charter travel, which again, we know was implemented last season, but is not actually in the CBA. So people might be like, well, this is a rule. They're obviously using charter travel. Why is it an issue? Why does it need to be on the table? Well, until it's in writing, it's not official, and that needs to be solidified in writing for it to be maintained. And then beyond that are things like benefits, health benefits, maternity benefits. So there's still a lot to discuss, which indicates that, you know, negotiations could even potentially go beyond that January 9th deadline if they don't make the headway needed over the next, 4 weeks plus.
Thank you so much, Annie Costabile. All right, with the last little bit of show, let's tell you what we're watching tonight. The last U.S. Women's National Team friendly will be tonight against Italy. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern on TBS, HBO Max. Elsewhere in the NBA tonight, the Bulls take on the Magic. That's at 7:30 Eastern on Peacock. And then Monday Night Football, Jackson Dart clearing concussion protocol. He will play tonight against the Patriots, the 10-2 Patriots against Drake May. That's at 8:15 Eastern on ESPN. And that's going to do it for this edition of Front Office Sports Today. We'll see you back here.